One of the most common questions regarding the carnivore diet is what drinks can you have on it? So in today's video, I'm going to break down exactly how each drink will affect you so you know exactly which drinks you can have and which ones you want to avoid. Let's start with tea. Tea is essentially leaves in a bag. So if you're drinking unsweetened tea, you are essentially just drinking leaves. Now, leaves obviously come from a plant. So at least to some degree, there will be defense compounds present. Many teas are high in defense compounds such as tannins. So if you are someone who has anxiety or an autoimmune condition, you likely want to avoid tea, simply because these defense compounds can cause flare-ups. A lot of people don't know this, but the majority of anxiety is actually caused by damage done to our gut. So because these defense compounds like tannins damage our gut, it can just make your anxiety symptoms worse. Now we'll get into coffee soon, but I do think that for most people, tea won't have many noticeable effects. I personally think tea tastes very average, so I don't drink it, but if you like tea, you can consume it on the carnivore diet. But remember, there are some people it will affect. A lot of people, however, think that diet drinks and tea are similar, as they both have very little calories. However, is this really the case? Let's have a look at how diet drinks will affect us. A lot of people claim that artificial sweeteners are safe for us because they're the most researched ingredient on the planet, and the majority of the studies say that they're safe. Well, to those people, I pose you one question. Who do you think funds these studies? And in fact, there are numerous studies showing that artificial sweeteners aren't safe. Let's take a quick look at how they're made. Aspartame, which is the main artificial sweetener used in diet drinks, is made from a genetically modified bacteria. Now what they do is they let this bacteria ferment and it produces 2 amino acids. They then extract these 2 amino acids and chemically combine them. So essentially, when you're drinking these artificial sweeteners, you are drinking chemically combined, genetically modified bacteria. We know these things damage our gut, and when something damages our gut, it is clearly, therefore, inflammatory to us. And just by looking at how the stuff is made, it does not take a rocket scientist to go, you know what, maybe it's not the best thing for us. Now keep in mind that aspartame is just one ingredient in these things. They literally just get a bunch of chemicals, put them together, and go, here you go, enjoy this nice drink. Now a lot of people think that these things help with weight loss, but here's the thing, they make you hungrier. They spike your blood sugar. Now whenever your blood sugar spikes, it blocks another hormone known as leptin. And the role of leptin is essentially to say to your brain, hey, we're full, we don't need to eat. And then to make matters worse, because you're giving yourself this sweet taste, you start craving other things. If you go 2 weeks without consuming anything sweet, you will lose all desire for anything sweet. All your cravings will disappear. But when you continue to have these sweet things, the cravings just generally don't go away. What's super interesting about this stuff is that if you cut it out and then you try have it again a month later, it just tastes like chemicals. Your taste buds change completely. I used to consume lots of diet drinks, and then I went strict on carnivore for a long time, and I tried one of them again. It genuinely tasted so bad I couldn't even finish it. It was my favorite drink. I used to drink it every single day on the way to the gym. I absolutely loved it. And then when I had it the next time, I could not believe how bad it tasted. A lot of people in the carnivore space say, oh, if you want diet drinks, you can have them. And I mean, of course you can. It's not a religion. You can do what you like. But if you are trying to get healthy and to get in shape, I seriously recommend avoiding these things. Now, if you are just someone who loves the fizz, a good replacement can be sparkling water. Both sparkling water and water, obviously, are both fine to drink on the carnivore diet. And if you find the right sparkling water, it actually can taste pretty decent. I mean, some of them taste like battery acid. Not that I've consumed battery acid, but it's exactly how I'd imagine it tastes. But there are actually some that taste pretty good. Some people add flavoring drops to their sparkling water, and I mean, it really depends on the ingredients in these things. Often, again, they have artificial sweeteners, which like we just discussed, you do want to stay right away from those things. How much water should you drink? Well, I think the best thing to do is to go by thirst. A lot of people get carried away with drinking water. They go for 4+ liters a day, and this can actually cause problems. I remember hearing a story of some CEO who just had terrible brain fog. They were just drinking water all day, consuming a ridiculous amount. And it got to the point where they just could not focus properly. So all they did was just stop drinking water. They drank when they're thirsty, and all of their problems went away. They could focus again. When you drink too much water, it actually dehydrates you. So you can have brain fog, low energy. You can start getting cramps. Having too much water is definitely not ideal. Go by your thirst. You don't need to overdo it. Water is the best thing you could possibly drink, and sparkling water is great also. However, the thing with sparkling water and water is that they can be a bit bland, which is why a lot of people opt for things like coffee. And again, with coffee, It is a plant. And again, like tea, because it is a plant, it will have some defense compounds present in it. So if you have anxiety or autoimmune conditions, again, I would probably recommend getting rid of it from your diet. Now, coffee can actually be worse than tea when it comes to anxiety because a lot of people find that the caffeine makes them feel more on edge. When you consume caffeine, many of your stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol increase. Coffee is definitely not ideal if you are someone prone to anxiety. Coffee, however, although it is a plant, it is still a much better alternative than some drink with artificial sweeteners. I personally drink coffee simply because I just like drinking a drink that tastes good. It's definitely not improving my health, and maybe it is my addiction talking, but I just enjoy drinking it, which is why I continue to consume it. One thing I will say regarding coffee, however, is if you are going to have it, don't have any of those alternative milks. Don't have oat milk, definitely don't have soy milk. The reason being is that these things have so many terrible ingredients in it, and especially if you're consuming soy milk, it's going to seriously mess with your hormones. Now, another reason you definitely don't want to consume these alternative milks, if you're a dude, is that you just sound like a wuss. Imagine you're out on a date with some chick. She's beautiful. You've just gone for a nice morning walk, and you go, "Should we get a coffee?" Yeah, all right. So you head to a coffee store. You being the gentleman that you are, you go up and order. Yeah, excuse me, can I have a soy latte? You look back at her. So what do you want? And she just looks at you. You're a dude, a fully grown man. You cannot be ordering soy milk or oat milk. She is never going on another date with you. She is now repulsed by you. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. A lot of people have their coffee with milk. Now, milk is one of the only drinks on this list that are true carnivore drinks. Milk obviously comes from an animal, usually a cow. However, there are still a number of problems with drinking milk. The first being is that, well, it's high in carbohydrates, and carbohydrates mess with your hunger signaling. Whenever you get that blood sugar spike, it blocks a hormone that tells your brain you're full. So if you are going to consume milk, I would definitely go for the full fat version, as the fat gives it less of a glycemic load, which essentially means it'll spike your blood sugar to a much smaller degree. Another issue that milk can present is through the pasteurization process. Milk that you get from your local supermarket goes through a process where they heat it to high temperatures. Now, this kills the bad bacteria and allows it to stay shelf stable for a much longer time. The only problem with this is that when they heat it to these high temperatures, it denatures the proteins, which can make them inflammatory. Me personally, whenever I consume pasteurized milk, my skin breaks out in acne, so I make sure to avoid it completely. Raw milk is definitely a better option if you can find a good and safe source of it. I think consuming milk on the carnivore diet is very person dependent. However, if one of your goals is weight loss, as is for many people, I would recommend that you avoid it. Now, instead of milk, many people opt for cream. Let's have a look at cream. Cream essentially is just the fat from the top of the milk, and this presents a problem in the sense that it is incredibly high in energy. And remember, fat on our body is stored energy, so if we consume too much energy, our bodies aren't going to tap into its own fat, and therefore you won't lose the weight. Now, a lot of people on carnivore hate the C word, the word calories. And to those people I say I agree with you. Calories are a flawed system, but it allows me to make my point very clear. In a 500ml thing of cream, which you could very easily consume one day if you were having a considerable amount of cream in each coffee, there is 1,500 calories. Now, 1,500 calories is a massive steak. It's about 750 grams, which is over 1.5 pounds of a ribeye. So if you are consuming a lot of cream, think about how much consuming an extra 1.5 pounds of meat a day is going to slow down your weight loss. One distinct advantage with cream over milk, however, is that because there are basically zero carbohydrates in it, it's not going to spike your blood sugar, which is why I personally have a tiny amount of cream in my coffee. I'm literally talking 10 to 20 mils. Now, the reason I have this is simply because I don't like black coffee. I tried to convince myself I did, but I mean, it just tastes bitter, doesn't it? So yeah, anyways, I have a bit of cream because it tastes nice, but do be very careful about how much you're having. Now, a great replacement for your morning coffee, which honestly I probably should do, is bone broth. Bone broth is essentially just simmered animal bones and connective tissue. So you essentially get this delicious tasting meat juice that contains all the essential nutrients you need with things like gelatin and collagen. It genuinely is incredible. Now, you can buy packets of bone broth from the supermarket, but usually these things have lots of additives, so you are just much better making your own bone broth. Bone broth is an incredible drink to have on the carnivore diet. So if you are looking for a drink on the carnivore diet, it is really, really hard to beat. bone broth. Another thing I see a lot of people consuming on carnivore is electrolytes. Companies like Element do unflavored ones, and I think for some people, when you start the carnivore diet, having some unflavored electrolytes can be a good thing. However, for the vast majority of people, as long as you're putting salt on your meat, I think they are a bit unnecessary in most cases. Again, be careful of the sweetened ones, as like we talked about, it can cause the issues with making you hungry, etc. I do think that the majority of these companies use stevia, which is more of a natural sweetener. However, I would still be very cautious. I don't think stevia is good for human health. When you look at it through the species appropriate diet lens, in the sense that if a species has not consumed a plant for an extended period of time, that it is going to cause problems to them. I mean, humans certainly have not been consuming stevia leaves throughout our existence. So again, I do think that stevia is going to negatively affect people. Now, if you do decide to add some electrolytes to your carnivore diet, which again, I don't think that most people need to, you do definitely want to avoid drinks like Powerade and Gatorade. First of all, these things contain very small amounts of electrolytes, so they're not going to be effective anyway. And then secondly, they have all these other ingredients and they're either high in sugar or artificial sweeteners. So definitely don't consume them. Personally, for me, when it comes to electrolytes, I just put salt on my steak. I salt my steak to taste. If it tastes good to me, I believe that is my body's way of saying this is the amount we want. And I get all the other electrolytes, such as magnesium and potassium, in the meat I eat. Next up, we have fruit juices, and I don't even know where to begin with this one. First of all, I'm not a big fan of fruit by itself. And fruit juices are essentially just fruit sugar concentrated. These things are ridiculously high in sugar. They get rid of all the other things like fiber, which again, I'm not a fan of fiber. I think it's completely unnecessary. However, the fiber in fruit does actually ensure that our blood sugar doesn't spike to a ridiculously high level. So when you do drink fruit juice, you're going to get these massive blood sugar spikes, which are going to cause crashes. And when they crash, you get ridiculously hungry, your energy drops. I'm really not a fan of fruit juices, and to be fair, I think this is the carnivore diet, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory as to why you wouldn't consume fruit juices on it. Now, alcohol. I do think the negative effects from alcohol drastically outweigh the good. There are so many things alcohol affects. It causes damage to our brains. It causes damage to our guts. It stops fat burning. As soon as you consume alcohol, your body stops burning fat, it stops burning anything you've eaten, and it begins using the alcohol as energy. One thing I do find funny is a lot of people say, well, glucose, which is what carbohydrates break down to, are our body's preferred fuel source because, well, we burn glucose before we burn anything else. And the funny part is like, well, no, actually, our body's preferred fuel source in their eyes would actually be alcohol because our body stops burning everything to prioritize burning alcohol first. The reason it does this is to get the alcohol out of the system. And it's the exact same reason our body burns glucose, because glucose is toxic to us, so it wants to get rid of it as fast as possible. Anyway, as I was saying, alcohol stops fat burning and it's super high in energy itself. Alcohol can seriously hinder results on the carnivore diet as it would any other diet. Another problem with drinking on the carnivore diet is that you get worse hangovers. I remember before I started carnivore, if I drank, I could wake up the next morning, and some mornings, I don't know how it's possible, but I would wake up feeling better than the night before. I remember one morning I woke up after drinking the night before and I ran a half marathon. However, now on carnivore, on the odd occasion that I do drink, I wake up the next morning feeling terrible. And the reason being as well, obviously on a carnivore diet, you consume very few to zero carbohydrates. And when you think about the word carbohydrate, carbs literally retain water, which helps to soak up this alcohol, as well as the fact that, say if you consume bread before you go out drinking, that bread helps soak up the alcohol. So yeah, I find on carnivore, if I do go out and drink, the next day I just wake up feeling terrible. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's my old age catching up to me. I am 21 now. Maybe my body just can't handle it like it could when I was a bit younger. So that could be it too. Now I know there will be some of you who are still going to drink even after I've said all that. So if you are going to drink, here is what I will say. Definitely avoid things like beer. Beer is high in phytoestrogens, which feminizes men. And by the way, just in case you're a chick watching this going, oh, I actually might start drinking beer because I want to be more feminine. It doesn't make you more feminine. It just messes with your hormones and makes you all moody. And also, don't drink those RTDs. They're loaded with sugar, loaded with artificial sweeteners. If you are going to drink, here's what I recommend. Get a spirit, preferably vodka, because they distill it so many times that it purifies it to a large degree. And what's interesting is, say you consume, I don't know, whiskey, bourbon, or one of the alcohols that are stored in those barrels, the defense compounds from those barrels actually leach into the alcohol. Because keep in mind, obviously, a wooden barrel, wood comes from a tree, which is a plant. So yeah, get vodka with a bit of soda water. And if you go, well, that's bland, that's terrible, I'm not going to drink that, maybe add a little bit of juice to the top of it. I know I said juice is terrible earlier, but if you're drinking alcohol, I mean, juice in comparison to alcohol is going to have very little effect on you. Juice is significantly better for you than drinking alcohol. And because you're on carnivore and your taste buds are so not used to anything sweet, just by having a little bit of juice at the top of this, it tastes ridiculously sweet. If I have a drink, which like I said, is very infrequently, that is what I have. But like I said, I would avoid drinking if you can. It's going to hinder your results. I was just saying, if you are going to drink, have this. Okay, so what is the best drink if you're going to have any? Now, disclaimer, none of these drinks except milk, water, bone broth, and sparkling water are actually carnivore. So the best plant to consume is none of them. You will be better if you consume none of them. However, like we said, some people like drinking something that tastes nice. I'm the same. So I do think the healthiest, and I use healthy in quotation marks because it's not healthy, it's just the healthiest, would be tea. And then followed closely by coffee. And the only reason coffee is just behind it is because caffeine can cause some people to be anxious. But then for some people, caffeine can enhance their focus. So, I mean, I guess tea and coffee are the best too. Now, a lot of people wonder if they should add fruit to their carnivore diet. And like I discussed earlier, I think it is very problematic for a number of reasons, which I break down in this video. Subscribe if you want to see more carnivore related videos, and I'll see you next time.